Rob Venn here, and in this video we're going to be looking at the basics of film form. We're going to start by looking at cinematography, specifically shot types. So, what is cinematography? Cinematography refers to anything in a film that is to do with the camera and the lighting. Lens type, things like that. So, the person in charge of all the camera work and lighting in a film is called the cinematographer. Cinematographers are obviously in charge of the cinematography. This is a bit more of a European term, cinematographer. In America, they tend to be called directors of photography, or DOP, or DP for short. Sometimes in the UK, they might be known as a lighting camera person. Usually a lighting camera man, increasingly now a lighting camera woman. So, what kind of elements make up cinematography? Okay, so these are the basics. We've got shot types, camera angles, image composition and aspect ratio. Within that as well, we can consider the kinds of film stock that's being used, because that has an effect. Lighting, colour, lens type, focus, and camera movement. Now, we are going to look at each one of these in turn in a different video. So each one gets their own video. Some might merge a couple, we don't know yet. But we're going to focus in this video on shot types. So, we can separate shot types into close shots and wide shots, and within that they too can be subdivided. So let's look at close shots first. Close shots can be subdivided into extreme close-ups, close-ups, big close-ups, and medium close-ups. Medium close-ups and close-ups are the two most commonly used. These are more rare. Don't get too hung up trying to distinguish one from the other. They are sometimes quite difficult to decide whether something's a close-up or an extreme close-up or a big close-up. They're fuzzy areas. In fact, in the film industry, they very rarely would distinguish. They just say close shot. But in film studies, we like to be more specific. What are close shots for? They show detail, they're for emphasis, and they can be very intimate. This can make them uncomfortable. I'll show you some examples to show what I mean. Okay, first of all, we've got the extreme close-up. You'll notice that all these shots are from Alfred Hitchcock's Vertigo, made in 1958, which in 2012 was voted by the world's film critics as the greatest film of all time. Came #1 in the Sight and Sound Critics poll. Now, with extreme close-up, as you can see, they used to show detail. Now, I'm using people in all of these pictures because they make it easier if you've got shots of people, because, you know, it's easy to distinguish one from one shot from another, but it doesn't have to be shots of people. The point of extreme close-ups is that they show detail. Now, this can be detail of text on a piece of paper or on a computer screen. It could be, you know, close-up of something that's very, very, very small. Right? So, you know, imagine you were looking at something through a microscope. You're blowing it up, for example. Right? So extreme close-ups are there to show detail. They are, as you can see in this case, if you've got a shot of someone's face, they can be very intimate. And that can be uncomfortable. I mean, you don't normally see people this close up. Unless you're moving in for a kiss or you're, you know, an optician or a dentist or something. You don't get that close to people usually. Right? That can be very intimate. It can also be very disturbing and unsettling. There's a term called proxemics. Proxemics deals with how far people tend to stand away from each other. And we don't like, in Western countries at least, getting closer than about 18 inches to people we don't really know that well. Usually if we're going to stand and talk to someone, we're going to be about, 2 meters away. So anything closer than that can be a bit uncomfortable. Now, big close-ups, they can be a little bit difficult to distinguish from a close-up. But if we assume that a close-up is basically head and shoulders, so the shots just above the head look to just below his shoulders, alright? This is the most commonly used shot along with medium close-ups when it comes to close shots. It's close enough that we got a good look at that person's face. We can see their emotion. We can see their expression. We can see a little bit of the background, but it's not too uncomfortable. Big close-ups are more intimate. They can be more claustrophobic. They can be more uncomfortable. Notice that this cutting them off assumes somewhere between, halfway through their forehead and just below their mouth. So, very close in. We don't see big close-ups that often. I would just basically say if you can't see their shoulders and you can't see the top of their head, it's a big close-up, right? As I said, close-ups, they're good for showing emotions, good for showing expressions. More commonly, we'll see the medium close-up, also known for obvious reasons as the bust shot. Basically, this is chest up, right? So, as you can see, obviously, they often used to show women, to show cleavage. So, if you want to bring some theory into this, you can bring in something like Lisbeth Van Zunen or Laura Mulvey and the male gaze theory, that women are there to be looked at. Okay, that it, breaks them up into pieces, it objectifies them, it focuses on things like their breasts or their legs or their bum or whatever, right? But, clearly in this shot, it's there not just to emphasize her beauty, but also so you can see her cleavage, right? That's what they call bust shots. But they're very commonly used because they more closely represent the kind of comfortable proxemics that we're used to. It's the kind of, that's kind of like roughly the kind of distance we stand away from people. It's not too close. We can still see the expressions on their face, but we can see some of the background as well. Often used for conversations in part of a shot reverse shot structure, which you'll learn about when we do editing. So these are the basic close shots. They're there to show detail. Then let's get a bit further away. We're going into the wide shots next. And wide shots can be separated into mid shots and long shots. So let's look at mid shots first. Further away than a close shot, closer than a long shot. They're halfway between, they're mid shots. Obvious, really, isn't it? Now, we said the medium close-up is a close-up, right? But it sort of straddles between a close shot and a mid shot. So I've left that in there as well. Alright, it's that halfway house, right? Medium shots. If a close-up cuts people off at the shoulders and a medium close-up cuts them off at the chest, a mid shot cuts them about halfway up their body. It's a mid or medium shot, right? Think belt line, alright? Although, if you're composing images, never compose it perfectly on someone's belt line or at their elbows or at their shoulders, because that has a tendency to look weird. You want a little bit above the belt or a little bit below, right? So mid shots, halfway up their body basically. Medium long shot cuts people off at the knees. Now you'll see medium long shot referred to in all sorts of different ways. It can be known as a medium long shot. Sometimes it's called a 3/4 shot because it's 3/4 of a person's body. Sometimes it's called a cowboy shot. The French would call it the plan américain, which translates as American shot. You hear all these being bandied around, but they basically mean a mid shot, okay? The thing about mid shots is that they're for, showing locations. We can see the background more than we can in a close shot. They're very good for establishing spatial relationships. By that I mean where people are in frame, how far away they are from each other, the proxemics I was mentioning earlier, okay? Still close enough that we can see people's faces, we can see their expressions, but we've got some idea of what's going on in the background as well. So, here we've got Kim Novak in Vertigo, right? Playing Madeline. Right, waist up. So it's basically cutting her off halfway up her body, right? We still see her elbows, remember? It's not too far off. But it's weird if you cut off the elbows, like I said. But it's one of the most commonly used shots because, again, like a medium close-up, it kind of like reflects that kind of comfortable distance we're used to standing from people. Okay, so medium close-ups and mid shots are the most common shots you see in TV shows and films. TV shows tend to be more medium shots, films tend to be more commonly using close-ups. Although in the golden age of television now, when TV is getting more cinematic, that's starting to change. As TV gets more adventurous. Okay. Again, mid-shots are often used in conversations. Medium long shot, three-quarter shot, cowboy shot, plain American. Cuts people off at their knees. Okay. Far enough away, we can still see the background and the location though. These are often used for master shots. Okay, I'll go into master shots when I do editing. We'll go into a bit more later. Right? But, you know, good for two shots. This is another thing. We can describe a shot by depending on how many people are in it. If there's one person in it, like this, it's a one shot. If there are two people in it, it's a two shot. If it's got three people in it, it's a three shot. If there are more than three people in it, it's a crowd shot. Right, let's go a bit further back. Wide shots. Okay? Wide shots are for showing action. Alright, if you've got an action sequence, chase, fight scene or whatever, you often use long shots so you can see the entire thing. Dance sequence in a musical like La La Land, for example. Within that, they're good for showing spectacle. Things that are spectacular. Beautiful scenery, huge explosions, car chases, whatever, right? So they're good for creating spectacle, especially if you've got a massive, great big widescreen image like an IMAX screen, right? Again, they can be used to establish a location. I mean, when you start the sequence, one of the first things you've got to know is, where are we? What's going on here? Establishing shot will show you where you are. Oh, I can see Big Ben, I can see red buses, I can see black cabs. I must be in London, right? That's an establishing shot. Again, like a medium shot or a three-quarter shot, they can establish those spatial relationships between characters. So the proxemics, etc., where people are. And they're basically just there to show what's going on. Now, how do we distinguish between a long shot, an extreme long shot, and what are master and establishing shots? Right. Before I go on, bear in mind we can mix these up, okay? So, long or extreme long explains how far away the camera is from the subject. An establishing shot and the master shot is what that shot is for, it's what it's doing, it's how it's communicating meaning, okay? So, a long shot. Basically, this is where we can see the entire of an object, alright? If we're talking about a person, we can see their entire body, head to foot, and they fill the frame. So the shot goes just above their head to just below their feet. Alright? It doesn't have to be that exact. Alright? Maybe they cut it off at the ankles. It's still a long shot. Alright? If it's further away than their knees, so if it was cutting her off here, it'd still be a long shot, okay? But, if we can see, if it was an aeroplane, we can see the entire aeroplane, it's a long shot, right? Airplanes are big. Extreme long shot is anything that's further away than this, right? So she films pretty much the entire frame here, and here Jimmy Stewart basically is about a third of the shot. And we can see the background as well, right? This has got two purposes. Yes, it is a long shot, but it's also establishing this location. It tells us where we are, therefore it is also an establishing shot. I'll come back to master shots in a minute. So establishing shots, they're usually a long and extreme long shot. They establish the location. We're at the Golden Gate Bridge. Look how tiny she is there, right? Telling us that, where she is. And we know it's a long shot because she's so small, right? Aerial shots are often used for establishing shots. An aerial shot is anything taken from the air. Now, to be an aerial shot, it has to be taken from an aircraft, something that flies. Traditionally, these were helicopters, sometimes aeroplanes, or even balloons and airships. Increasingly nowadays, because it's cheaper, we start to use drones for these kind of shots. But remember, drone shots have only been a thing in since the mid-noughties, basically, so it's only been in the last 10-15 years they've been common, right? We certainly didn't have drones in 1958 when Vertigo was being made. However, they're not always taken from things that fly. It can be taken from anything that's very high up. You could be looking down from the top of a building. Commonly, you'll use cranes, right? Put the camera on top of a big crane. Cranes and helicopters are expensive to rent. So, quite often, if you have to do some extreme long shots or some establishing shots, you try to do them all on the same day where possible, because you want to make the most of your crane rental. Master shots. Now, master shots we'll get back to when we do editing, okay? You've got to understand that films are not plays. They're made in little bits, and you chop those bits up and you put them in the order you want them to be. That's what editing is, right? So, when you're filming a sequence, what you'll do is you need coverage. Coverage means you shoot a sequence in all sorts of different ways, so that when you come to edit it, you've got variety. So, what you'll do first of all is you'll shoot the entire scene from start to finish in some kind of wide shot. In this case, look, of course, they've used a 3/4 shot. Right? We can see the environment, we can see both people, we can see their relationship to each other in terms of their proxemics. Right? You do the entire thing in this shot. Then, maybe, you'll do all of Jimmy Stewart's dialogue as a medium close-up. Then you'll do all of this woman's dialogue as a medium close-up. Then you might have a close-up of what he's looking at in his hand. You shoot it in all sorts of different ways, and you edit it in whatever sequence you want later. But master shots are very useful as a basically a foundation of your editing. It's like a safety shot. Often a master shot is the first thing you'll see in a sequence. Sometimes they will double as establishing shots. A good way to think about this is, remember, you've all seen Friends, right? The first thing you'll see in an episode of Friends is usually an establishing shot of Central Park, okay? Looking towards, their building, right? This establishes where we are. We're in New York. We're, outside Central Park, right? Now, we then have another establishing shot. Let's say it's the outside of their building, right? You see a shot of their building, the camera tilts up, looking up at the building, so you know they're in that building somewhere, right? Then you cut again, and you'll have a master shot of the inside of, let's say, Monica's apartment. So each shot is giving us more and more information as it gets closer and closer. So that shot of the inside of Monica's apartment, let's say we can see the settees they're sat on, right? That is both an establishing shot and a master shot, because we'll keep coming back to that. But we'll talk about that in more detail when we do editing. So, those are your basic shot types. Next video up, we'll do camera angles. If you've got any questions, you know where to find me, or you can leave a comment below. See you in the next one.